Back from commercial break right now. The audience has been so good about being quiet. As we continue, we want to talk about the drought more and climate change, with Oregon State researchers saying there's evidence of drought over the past 20 years and no sign of it slowing. There's also concern here in Central Oregon for those who rely on wells for their water. Owners this year report at least 30 running dry in the Upper Deschutes Basin. Oregon's Water Rescue Commission is considering a plan to deny permits for new wells where water has been overly appropriated. Viewer Kate Fitzpatrick asks, what will you do to manage water as a resource? And we start with Christine Drazen.
Yeah, this is critically important to families across our state. If the well goes dry, then you're no longer able to remain in your home, and it's a safety issue as well as other concerns. We had the opportunity in a recent legislative session to engage immediately when we saw drought conditions, particularly in Southern Oregon and the Klamath area. And the Speaker of the House held that drought funding hostage until we could come in for a special session to advance the eviction moratorium issue. They needed that support to respond to wells that had run dry in the summer when we knew the problem had happened. And instead, that money was held back until we came into a special session in December. We can't politicize this issue. We need to recognize that families need help, people need help now, and to put families in a position where they are held hostage for larger political issues is unconscionable.
All right, Betsy Johnson.
Thank you very much. We have water problems all over the state, and they are not all of a similar nature. I represented coastal Tillamook County. Their water problems are not Klamath's water problems, are not Umatillo's water problems. I was down in the Klamath Basin talking to farmers and producers down there. That is an existential crisis. I believe that the best solutions come locally. We need to have the humility to listen to local farmers and producers, as I did in Umatilla County when I was asked by a colleague to come over and participate in the Umatilla Basin Sequestration Project. There, they listened to the locals who described the problem, postulated a solution, sat down and negotiated with the sovereign tribes, the environmental community, the farmers. The farmers put huge financial liens on their property in order to develop a solution. The state needs to be a reliable partner. We have to have an agency that functions, not the mess that we've got in water resources right now. And we've got to recognize that some of these huge mitigation projects will go over many years, and the state has to be a reliable partner in funding those. If we expect people to collaborate, we expect a rainbow at the end, which means funding to do the project.
I believe water will be a top priority, the top natural resource issue for me as our next governor. I was in Southern Oregon talking to a group of farmers about their irrigation district and the fact that they weren't going to get water this growing season, what they were going to do, and to listen how they were trying to adapt to the change in the climate, what was happening, was really both distressing and hopeful that they were coming up with ideas. But the state, I have to agree with Senator Johnson, the state has to be more proactive. You know, there's great innovation and collaboration happening here in Central Oregon around your irrigation work and how you're managing your basin, but the state should be a strong partner to do that, not just step back and say, we don't know what's going on. We need to be in there with you, listen to your ideas, making sure you have the resources you need for the studies and the innovation and upgrading of your equipment, for example, in conservation in our irrigation districts. There's a lot of work to do here. And as governor, making it a top priority, working with our agencies, but more importantly, working alongside local communities to solve the issue.
Rebuttal, Christine?
Yeah, I just want to mention that all of what you just heard was a lot of campaigning. Because the reality for what will happen for water users, if Tina Kotek has the opportunity to be governor, is that they won't see water. And there will be more regulation. And there will be less water for people to grow crops. There will be less water to go around. And you cannot underestimate how critical water is across our state, to the point that Senator Johnson made. We need water to be approached differently in all local regions. You won't get that out of Speaker Kotek.
This is why we need an independent governor who can bring the sides together and actually have a conversation about what are practicable solutions. Here in Central Oregon, and I grew up in Redmond, I'm well aware of the challenges for water here, none the least of which is oversubscription of water. We've got to have some tough conversations about how many more straws we can put in the aquifer before we run some of those aquifers dry. We need a functioning agency. We've got to use innovation, and we've got to leave the dams alone. It'll drive energy prices and costs for everybody.
Tina, final word.
Well, I don't understand Representative Drazen's accusations. As Speaker of the House, I not only passed but also strongly supported all of the recent investments we've made at the state in looking at our groundwater studies, looking at our permitting system, local planning. And as it relates to the Klamath Falls dollars, we did get it done. When the plan was fully vetted and knew what we were doing with the money got out there. So this idea that there were politics is just a lie.
Well, next we move on to something we heard about from several viewers. And true or not, the perception here in Central Oregon is that Portland and the Willamette Valley get most of the attention of what happens in Salem. City Club Executive Director Kim Gammond and Deschutes County Commissioner Phil Chang both raised this issue, asking, how could the state support balancing needs in both the western and eastern parts of the state, connecting the urban with the rural? And we begin with Betsy Johnson.
Well, I've heard that joke before, that PGE stands for Portland Gets Everything. Coming from rural Central Oregon, when it was rural, and representing a rural district, I am well aware of how angry, pissed off people are outside of the Portland metro area about not getting what they perceive to be their fair share of all sorts of things. Grants, access to cooperative agencies, feeling disrespected, ignored, and frankly not at the table. That's why I think the independent governor could bring an opportunity for all people to be heard on these important issues and help find solutions that are practicable and implementable and subscribed to by the majority of Oregonians, not the majority telling the minority what to do.
Tina Kotek.
I want to be a governor for the entire state. And how you do that? You do a lot of listening, and you spend a lot of time outside of Salem. We have very unique communities across our state that understand the problems that they're facing and have really good ideas. And my role as governor is to make sure that they have support from the state. If there are barriers in the way that the state can move aside, a governor can play a key role there. And let's be clear, these aren't easy issues. There are divides in our country, in our state. And the more we listen to each other, dialogue, be in community together, working on these issues together, I believe we can make progress. I also think it's who you appoint to your stakeholder groups. That's fancy language for the people you bring together to discuss an issue. Do you have all perspectives at the table? That is something I did as Speaker of the House. That's definitely something I would do as governor, because that's how you make the best policy that serves the entire state.
I'm a small town girl. I'm originally from Klamath Falls. And that's usually how I introduce myself almost everywhere I go. It's one of the most important things to know about me, is that I grew up in a community that was impacted when the natural resource economy went belly up down there. And it meant that I understood differently the impacts that politicians have in rural communities. It means that I am empathetic when somebody's having a hard time because I've been there. And it means that I know how to fight for balance and to fight to have those voices heard. You know, I was reading a sign in the Mill area, in Mill District area, that said that the last log was milled here in 1993. Bend has had an extraordinary opportunity to reimagine itself and still be a strong community. Different folks across the state haven't had that same value and that same benefit. When natural resources economies went away, they were left struggling. We have got to serve all Oregonians. I love Oregon, I love Oregonians, and I know that we can solve these problems together.
Betsy Johnson.
I want to put an exclamation point on the need to have balance in our decision-making in Salem. The problem with Kate Brown has been that she has appointed people to boards and commissions that come with a complete bias. She has directors that have biases. That makes it virtually impossible for people to have a fair shake at a level playing field to get a permit in a timely and accurate way. The fact that she's appointed an expert on exotic snakes to the ODF&W board, I voted against that, is laughable. We need to have different points of view on all of those boards and commissions, and I would do that as governor.
Tina Kotek, any rebuttal? Christine?
So I'll just end with this, and that is that the real rural-urban divide really does have an awful lot to do about two things: respect and opportunity. And I will respect all Oregonians no matter where they're from. The urban core, they need help and support. The rural parts of our state, they need different kinds of help and support. But that respect needs to equate into local control, local voices being at the table. And there has to be an opportunity. You have to give people the opportunity to achieve their best future and not regulate the heck out of them and leave them with nothing.
If I could just add in there, since I have my rebuttal, I think there are great ideas and great leaders across our state, urban, suburban, and rural. And the benefit of everybody talking together is you get even better ideas. And helping local communities have the resources they need to chart their own course. And that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan and a strong proponent of making sure every part of our state has access to high-speed internet. Because then you have a level playing field, and anywhere in the state you can do what you need to do.
Our next question comes from a small business owner here in Central Oregon, Joshua Sims, and I think he echoes a lot of what small business owners would ask here on this stage tonight of the candidates. Joshua writes, with state resources and incentives given to recruit big out-of-state businesses, how will you support, develop, and reward small homegrown businesses in the state? And we begin with Tina Kotek.
I think you do it sector by sector, and our small businesses are such a driving part of this economic recovery right now. We have to support them because the big companies, they're important, but they'll be okay at the end of the day. But the small businesses are really struggling, right? During the pandemic, one of the things I worked on very specifically was to make sure that we changed how the payroll taxes were going to happen after everybody lost their jobs and unemployment benefits were, we're charging everyone's payroll taxes to go up. We redid the trust fund to save billions of dollars for small businesses so their payroll taxes could remain manageable. That meant a lot to those businesses. So having those specific ideas to make sure small businesses get some tax breaks, get some more love out there because they are the backbone of our communities. And at the state, we should be focusing on them as much as we do the big guys because at the end of the day, the smaller businesses are the sectors that need more help.
Christine Drazen.
As I've traveled the state and talked to people in all corners of the state, the business owners are the ones that are just desperate for change. They are being crushed under Oregon's regulatory environment where the things that work in Portland suddenly are mandated statewide, where this big idea that advances a political agenda suddenly is the responsibility of a local business. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. They're trying to perform a service. They're trying to serve their clients. They're trying to, they're trying to sell something. They're just trying to do their job. And instead, they are being crushed in a regulatory environment in our state that's making it harder and harder for them to be job creators and to support their own families. So as governor, I have committed to review rules and regulations in my first 100 days in office and repeal, roll back, or revise rules and regulations to create an opportunity for people, no matter where you live in the state, to be able to thrive.
I completely agree with Christina on that point. The rules and the regulations are the thing that I hear most about from small businesses, particularly in the agricultural sector or the natural resource sector, where the regulatory agencies have become punitive, retaliatory, quick to punish farmers and producers. Not so much when Portland pumps raw sewage into the Willamette, but if you're a farmer or a dairyman in Tillamook and you try to clean out a ditch, you're going to have the state regulatory agencies all over you. We permit sequentially. We allow one agency to block the input of another agency. Time and money seem to have no meaning to the permitting agencies except if they're busting somebody. And so having been a small business owner when I was in the commercial helicopter industry, my husband is a small business guy, we need to pay just as much attention to both their retention and their recruitment in making Oregon a place where you can actually build a small business with an expectation of making a reasonable profit and not be squashed by the state of Oregon's over-regulatory environment.
Any rebuttal?
Well, I think it's very important to have a state government, and one of the reasons I'm running for governor is to make sure our state government is more consumer-focused, more customer service-oriented, and making sure that when there are things on the books that are required, permits and regulations, that there's good follow-through and they're effective and efficient. But I would ask that you ask Senator Johnson and Representative Drazen which regulations they don't like. Is that paid sick leave? Is that equal pay for equal work? I would really ask what regulations they think aren't working, because they have voted against some things that are very important for Oregonians that large business groups didn't like. So we should ask that question.
Would you like to take that question up?
Well, I want to take up several things that she said. One of them I want to take up is answer the damn phone. In our last appearance together, we had a conversation about why Intel left the state and took a big piece of their business with them. I spoke to the manager of the Intel plant in Hillsborough, and he said one of the reasons was the state was so unresponsive. And so off they went. They needed a little bit of additional land next to their Ronler Acre campus, and we never answered the phone or helped them. That is terribly embarrassing. And the regulations that I've consistently voted against are the ones that do it to Oregonians, not with Oregonians. For example, cleaning a ditch in Tillamook County so that cows aren't up to their tummies in mud.
Christine Drazen?
I was just going to say, Tina had me at customer service oriented, and then she lost me at what could you possibly not want, what could you possibly want to change? Here's the thing. She doesn't want to change anything. She wants the regulatory environment to remain the same. She wants Oregon to be the same and stay on the same track. I think it's really important to know that we are talking about a dramatic difference of philosophical approaches here. I really want to serve Oregonians. I want to make life better for Oregonians. And the regulations that I will change are the ones that, after review, we determine don't serve Oregonians.
Let's stay with the economy and move to high tech, which was mentioned here, but we'd like to expand on it. Adam Kranicki from the OSU Cascades Lab of Innovation asked us to talk about just that, innovation. And he's joined by a number of Oregon State University alums who are specifically asking about the Semiconductor Competitiveness Task Force and what you'll do to support high-tech research and development across the state. Christine, we begin with you.
Yeah, I agree with Senator Johnson on the issue of Intel. It's stunning to me that our leadership would not have pursued Intel's expansion within the state of Oregon. When it comes to the task force and supporting the high-tech industry, they are a critical industry in our state, and I will do everything in my power to continue to support them and continue to expand and grow that sector. But what was interesting to me about the task force response was the issues that they flagged that they needed help on are issues that all businesses need help on. They said our tax environment is crushing. They said the regulatory environment is uncertain. They had, their challenges are challenges faced by all businesses. So my approach to this is help high tech, yes, and also help businesses across our state to ensure that we stand with and support job creators, which creates the opportunity for families to be more stable and to support our state as a whole.
One of my proudest accomplishments in the legislature was the formation of OMIC, the Oregon Innovation Manufacturing Center. OSU is a partner there, and one of your fine engineering professors, Dr. John Parmigiani, is an integral part of OMIC. OMIC is designed to do R&D in the innovation space in order to make airplanes fly lighter, faster, greener. It is all about new techniques and technologies to help foster innovation. I would say that the task force, unfortunately, on the chip part of it, I could have saved him the cost of doing the task force because it is exactly what business needs. And we did the task force after Intel had already left the state. That was like closing the barn door after the horse was out. And those things that Ms. Drazen just outlined, tax accommodation, education, additional land, and the burden of Oregon's regulatory, among their other findings, are some of the problems. I would hope that, as Ms. Kotek says, that the big guys can take care of themselves, that we need to recognize that the chip industry needs our help as well to flourish in Oregon.
We're going to have to ask you to wrap there. Tina?
Well, I certainly support advanced manufacturing. I've looked at the Semiconductor Task Force, and we want to support organizations like Intel because they also create other jobs and other jobs and other jobs and other businesses. It's a whole ecosystem that supports our state. But they're not the only employers out there. I think the state can do a better job in our Business Oregon department, our Organization of Business and Economic Development, of supporting our small businesses, those small businesses who want to go to the next level in different sectors. There are so many areas of our economy that are so truly Oregon, not just Intel. So making sure we're supporting our small businesses day in and day out, because making it easier to get those capital loans, making sure they have the workforce they need by, for example, supporting our community colleges, making sure their workers have a place to live, and supporting our housing market. So there are a lot of ways we can support businesses, not just only focus on our large industries like Intel.
Any rebuttal?
I would, sitting here in a university facility, urge our institutions of higher learning to work together to see how we maximize any of the grants coming from the federal government out of the recently passed legislation, working to improve the semiconductor industry. And so I think the more collaboration that we in Oregon can demonstrate, the better. I think an independent governor could help lead those presidents to a collaborative grant writing and grant seeking methodology that maybe heretofore has not been available.
Christine?
I would say a Republican governor could do the same. And as an aside, I also believe that the reason that some of the tax burden has been so aggressive and oppressive to so many businesses across our state is because of the passage of the commercial activities tax, which was voted for by both of my opponents in this race. If we're serious about supporting business, if we're serious about improving our economy, growing jobs, and supporting Oregonians no matter where you are across the state, then we've got to be serious about holding the line on new taxes.
The businesses who came forward to the legislature asking for a dedicated funding source for our schools, which became the commercial activity tax, funding the Student Success Act, $1 billion more per year. That came from the business community saying our schools need to be better. My job as governor is to make sure we follow through on that promise. But let's remember that new business tax also came along with a middle class tax cut as well. So it was a comprehensive tax package to fund our schools and to help Oregon families.
As governor, I would view any legislation that was big and as the corporate activity tax as an iterative tax. It may need tweaking. It may need adjustment. I don't think there was a sufficiently robust conversation in the legislature about the cumulative effect of that tax as it cycled through the supply chain. And as governor, I think it's important to be able to look at some of the legislation that was passed and say the legislature may not have gotten this right. With COVID making Zoom meetings the norm, not the exception, I think that there's an opportunity to relook at some of those issues, and as governor, I would do that.
Yeah, I'm on the stage today with people that voted for billions of dollars in new taxes in the gas tax, a tax on your cars, a tax for boats, a tax for you name it, a cat tax. People that are on the stage with me today voted to keep your kicker. Like, there is no end to how much you can grow government if you're just determined to do it. And we've got to begin to make the connection that when you make those decisions, that you're going to double the size of government in 10 years, that it is Oregonians and Oregon businesses that will pay for that. So you are making a choice.
We move along now to a challenge from a News Channel 21 viewer, Rachel Nellis. She asked you talk about some issues on which you and your opponents agree. Issues on which you agree, and how you would incorporate them into your administration, remembering Oregon is made up of more than just Republicans and Democrats. And we begin with Betsy Johnson.
Well, I think you have heard us all talk about the need for collaboration. I believe that only an independent governor can really facilitate that because, said or unsaid, the Democrats have an agenda, the Republicans have an agenda. And either one of my two opponents, if elected governor, will feel the need to deliver on that agenda to their partisan supporters. An independent governor, unfettered by an ideology answerable only to Oregonians, would have the ability to draw folks together in a way that I think would facilitate a better and more collaborative outcome. That is, doing it with Oregonians, not to Oregonians. And I submit that that's the whole premise of my campaign, is to bring the best ideas from both parties and make sure that we can implement practicable solutions to some of our most difficult problems. You don't have to hit a home run at every at-bat. We can start working on some of these problems incrementally. I think you have heard from all of us collaboration. I would submit that an independent governor with no agenda, beholden to nobody, is the right person to lead that effort.
Tina Kotek.
Well, I think what we've seen today, and I appreciate the question, Rachel, is we have a lot of agreement here on both the challenges and opportunities. You know, we all talked about the need for higher education, for example, and our desire to help grow the state economically in every corner of our state, and that's important. I think what's really key now is not who can agree on what the problems are or where we might find agreement, but who has the best ability to do the job as our next governor. I was Speaker of the Oregon House for 9 years. I had to work across the aisle every day to make sure every one of my colleagues in the House could be successful in their districts, working hard to bridge differences, bringing people together to solve problems. And frankly, that's what we need to do now over the next 4 years. And as governor, I'm going to get into the details. I'm going to work hard with people and get stuff done, because that's the only reason I'm in this. I'm here for the people to solve problems, and that's why I'm running.
What's interesting to me about these ongoing conversations is, as the House Republican leader, I couldn't do anything without working across party lines. That's the only way anything got done. So it wasn't a hobby for me. It wasn't an aside. It wasn't something that I did electively because I chose an issue that I might be able to work with someone on. I supported my caucus members. I supported Oregonians across our entire state in that capacity by bringing the voices forward that were frankly crushed out by single-party control. And this is the work. This is the work, and I have been doing that work to reach across the aisle proactively, to reach across the aisle out of necessity, and frankly to reach across the aisle to stand up for people that for far too long have been left behind. We agree that homelessness is a challenge. I agree with the Speaker. We would approach it differently. And certainly there are other categories that we could agree on, which as we worked through the legislative process together during COVID, there were lots and lots of unanimous bills during that process. But that's the work, is to reach across the aisle, and as House Republican leader, that's what I did.
Any rebuttal?
As a House Republican leader, Representative Drazen walked Republicans out the door instead of taking on the biggest issue of our existential time, which is climate change. And I just have to say, Senator Johnson even admitted in an Oregonian article that she can't speak to one large piece of legislation that she's moved forward in the state. This is about bold leadership right now. And frankly, I'm not seeing that from my opponents, but you can look at my track record. I know how to do this work, and I want to do it for you.
Betsy, weigh in
and I
first.
feel compelled to respond to that. Some of the big, bold legislation that Tina championed would have broken the back of rural Oregon. I take great pride in the fact that my accomplishments mean serving my constituents, being on their side when the state of Oregon pushed them down and crushed them down. One of my strongest accomplishments was being an advocate for the people that I was honored to represent. So not everybody has to have huge signature pieces of legislation, many of which, most of which, almost all of which were controversial. I think it's plenty good to go and serve Oregonians without signature pieces of legislation.
Final word, Christine?
Yeah, it's like we were living two different lives when I was House Minority Leader and Tina was the Speaker. I was standing up for Oregonians. You know why we had to walk out over cap and trade? Because, in fact, their approach to it harmed people. It advanced a political agenda while it harmed Oregonians. Everyday working Oregonians across our state were not good enough to be accommodated in that legislation. And it required that we made a big, bold, very difficult, controversial decision to stop the process, to stop a bad piece of legislation from moving.
We'll continue on this theme of unity, and this is our final question of the night. And it came into News Channel 21 from an educator, a teacher, concerned about students and trust in government and what the future will hold if we don't rebuild that trust. And my mind goes to the students here in the room from this campus, OSU Cascades. A couple volunteering to be our timekeepers tonight. They're engaged in the process. But many students aren't. So how do we go about re-engaging students in the political process and rebuild trust? Tina Kotek.
It's a really great question. I'm really proud to have a group of young people on my campaign called Teens for Tina. I had a high school student who said, we want to volunteer for you. What they said they're looking for in their next governor and in their leaders across the board are people who listen to them, listen to what they care about, and actually take action. And when I sit and talk with these young people, they're so inspiring. They care about climate change. They want to have a planet for themselves and their kids to still be here. They care about gun violence. They are so tired of feeling scared at school. They want to make sure young women are horrified that they don't have potentially the right to choose in our country about what they do with their bodies. They want leaders today to stand up for the things they care about, and I'm just inspired by them. It motivates me to listen to our young people who are that generation that will keep us going forward, and we just need to listen to them and work with them to solve problems.
Christine Drazen.
I have three teens in my house. Well, one's not a teen anymore. And I can tell you that they are tired of being scared. Their leaders for too long have told them they have to be afraid of everything. They have to be afraid of COVID. They have to be afraid of climate. They have to be afraid of their neighbors. They have to be afraid of what they might say or do. Leaders for far too long are leading with fear. And that is the wrong way to approach the next generation. The next generation has big ideas, and they want a future for themselves. And we have got to engage them where they are. We've got to recognize that they deserve to be heard. And the future does not exist without them. And we need to recognize that they matter, and they should not be scared by their leaders. But far too often, that's what's been happening.
Betsy Johnson.
When 18% of Oregonians, only 18% think we're headed in the right direction, and 8 counties have actually voted to leave the Oregon family, we know that we're doing something very, very wrong. And I think part of the acid drip on students' confidence in government is watching the two partisan parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, hammer at each other and see who can score up the most wins on their ideological scorecard. That's the call for a nonpartisan governor, a non-affiliated governor beholden to no ideology, no agenda, not having to deliver to their partisan supporters. I think that that's the best way to lead Oregon out of the trouble that we're in right now. And when I went through the list of bipartisan support that I've gotten from Oregonians who have served in government, that ought to be a clear signal to Oregon voters that those people that know the process now know that it's broken and believe that the only way to change Oregon is a people's governor, not beholden to any political party or ideology.
Because of time constraints, we're going to have to forgo rebuttal on that question and move to our closing remarks. We're going to continue in the same order. So that would put Christine Drazen first with her closing remark. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. It's been a privilege to be here tonight to have this conversation that's so critical to the future of our state. As I traveled the state and I talked to Oregonians in every corner of our state, men, women, business owners, families, they shared with me their hopes and their dreams and their fears and their frustrations. And their stories, I am now the keeper of their stories. And I am here to serve their future and their needs. I'm running for governor to lead our state in a new direction because that is what they have asked for. They have asked for change. I could not agree more that we have an opportunity to solve these big problems if we choose change. I started off this conversation asking Oregonians, how do you feel about the way that things are going? Is your family better off today than it was 4 or 8 years ago? Make no mistake, my opponents on this stage represent the status quo. There is no greater partisans, no greater insiders than the people on the stage with me today. Moving ahead, if you like the direction of our state, you have 2 great choices in either one of these women. But if you want change, if you want a new direction, if you want durable solutions to actually solving the problems that we face as a state, then we've got to do something different than what we have been doing. We need to work together. We need to work together to choose change. And I'm asking for you to join me.
Betsy Johnson is next.
I don't think of anything more bold in terms of change than electing a non-affiliated governor, not answerable to any political agenda or political ideology. Neither of my opponents can lead Oregon forward.